Hello, and welcome to part 4 of the 2024 VBridger rigging tutorial. This part is all about head angles, so we're going to be having some fun. This tutorial will focus on using the 3D rotation expression menu, which was relatively new a few months ago when I started making this tutorial series, so you might be more familiar with it now. But in case you're not, this tutorial will explain how it works and some really good practices around using it. It has made some of the most difficult parts of rigging extremely easy and quick now, so it should save you a lot of time if you learn how to use it properly. My apologies for the furnace in the background. It needs to be on because it is cold and I will have to record through it. While this is a continuation of the previous tutorial, this should technically work with almost any setup that you have for the face, if you've done it remotely correctly at all. So even if your deformers don't look exactly the same as mine, you should be fine. Before I get into anything, I'm first going to explain the 3D rotation expression menu and how it works as a tool, some of the options and what they do. And then we'll get into actually rigging the face. So first things first, I'm going to create a deformer with which I will demonstrate the settings of the 3D tool. I will make it as a child of the head rotation deformer just because for now it's not going to move anything. This will eventually be the face deformer, so I will call it face_xy_3D. Then I will just size it to the face, since it'll eventually contain the face. There's really no reason why I didn't need to put the face in it. I just didn't when I recorded this. In order to open the 3D menu, you want to go to Modeling, Parameter, and then Apply 3D Rotation Expression. I have it set up to a hotkey so I can summon it whenever I want. If you've been following along since the eye tutorial, you'll also probably have the irises already in here. I had briefly gone over this menu in that tutorial, but this will be much more in-depth. To get started, I will add the Face XY3D deformer with the little plus button on the top of the list. I'll be showing you what all the settings do in a moment. For now, just keep in mind that I've turned off the automatic updating of the keyframe on that bottom checkbox just above the Update Keyframe button. Having this turned on negatively impacts your performance and causes the frames to make updates that you sometimes don't want it to do, so I recommend turning it off. If I just apply the keyforms right now without changing any of the settings, we can see what it does. We can see that the plane deforms quite a bit. Right now it's in planarization mode, which gives us a perfect, flat plane rotation. So it is rotating exactly 30 degrees as a flat plane would in 3D. We have perspective as well, so it deforms quite a bit as it's rotating to pretend to be 3D even more. Perspective is an actual pain to work with. Even 3D VTubers usually turn perspective off on the camera and just use orthographic mode. It looks better. It makes sense. Recreating it in 2D serves no purpose other than to make your life harder. I don't recommend it. I'm not going to use it. I'm going to turn it off, and I'm going to pretend it doesn't exist. With the 3D tool, we can choose any angle range that we want. So, if you increase the X angle, it'll rotate further on the X angle. If you increase the Y direction, it'll increase the angle on the Y. Pretty self-explanatory. For standard VTuber models, I recommend no more than 25 degrees on X and 15 degrees on Y. If you go beyond 15 degrees on Y, you have to worry more about the under chin area, which becomes a pain. And if you go further than 25 on the X, you usually have to worry about the nose and eyebrows blocking the eyes, which is also a pain. So standard range of motion, 25, 15, you should be good. Less than that is even fine. I also like to turn extended interpolation on fairly early, as it gives the actual, nice rotation instead of just the linear blending that the default keys have. Now it's rotating nice and smooth, however, it is rotating around the wrong spot. It is rotating from the middle of the head, and it needs to rotate from the base of the skull. In order to do that, we're going to change the center of rotation. So first I'm going to change the Y value and just lower that little green X until it is kind of lip height. Usually between the lips and the nose is where it should be. By default, this should be in the center of the canvas, but unlike the symmetric ruler, which we fixed last tutorial, for some reason the 3D expression menu doesn't split a pixel if you have an odd number of pixels in your canvas. So I need to add a 0.5 to my X center of rotation for it to actually be in the center of the model. Luckily, this actually saves, so you don't have to ever redo this part. And now our rotation is happening around this new center point. To demonstrate the Z direction offset, I'm just going to slide it up a bit and apply it to show you what it looks like. If you switch to depth estimation mode and then just move the deformer, this is essentially the same as Z direction offset. You just manually do it and put it where you want it instead, which is a lot easier than messing with a number. When in depth estimation mode, you can't update the keyform. When you are at the default values of the parameters, you have to be at either the corner or the side. You can't be at the default value. Depth estimation mode also lets you manipulate the shape of the deformer and create a 3D form out of it. So if I pull the center of this deformer forward and then calculate my keyforms, you can see that it maintains that shape as it rotates. The X and Y keys will always be the same, but you can change how the rotation works on the corners. By default, it uses the XY directions simultaneously mode. There is also the from X direction to Y direction and from Y direction to X direction modes. Each one does something a little bit different. The easiest way to see the difference is if I switch the range of the angle to 90. X and Y simultaneous might look the best right off the bat. It's basically mixing both X and Y rotation on the corners, so it's ignoring gimbal rotation order to blend the rotations together. I personally find that this is an unpredictable and annoying way to rig the face, and often results in weird warpy shit, which we don't want on our 2D models. Weird warpy shit is not the way to go. So I'll show you the two better options. The first is from X direction to Y direction, and you can see with this option that when you move up on the Y value, the deformer only moves up. It doesn't move left and right at all, it only moves up, which means that any deformation that you need to rig also only needs to move up. So you only have to worry about moving any of your assets in one direction, vertically. Now, if you are more of a horizontal fan, you can use from Y direction to X direction. And in this case, the corners will only move left and right. So as you move along X, the deformer will only move straight across horizontally. Either of these two options are better than XY simultaneous. It's more predictable, which makes your life a lot easier, and it looks just as 3D at the end of the day, so you're good. I am going to use from Y direction to X direction for this tutorial. So I'll only ever have to worry about moving stuff left and right on the corners when I have to animate the corners. Now I am going to go ahead and get into the rigging. So I will grab all of my eye deformers, my irises and my eyelids, and create an eyes_xy_3D deformer. I will reparent my 3D eye deformer to the head rotation deformer, and then I can add some 3D settings to it. By default, the 3D settings that a deformer gets are whatever you previously had selected. So because I selected the irises when I created my 3D eye deformer, it has those settings right now. So I'm just going to right click on the head deformer that we already had and hit copy settings. then right-click on my eye deformer, and then paste the settings. So really easy to copy your settings to any deformers that need the same. A fun thing about the 3D menu is that if you try to click away without applying the keyform, it won't save your changes. So if I click away without updating the keyform, all of those settings that I just copied are now gone. So I will copy all of those settings again, paste them again, and then make sure I actually update the keyform. Since it's currently in depth estimation mode, it won't let me apply the keyform because I am at the default value of the parameters. So I'm going to switch to planarization mode. I always like to start with planarization mode because it gives a very solid basis from which to use depth estimation mode. So planarization mode first, just to get all those angles perfect off the bat, then depth estimation mode to change the depth of the deformer or add shape to it. I will be using those steps for all of the face deformers. I'm going to make my eye deformer a little bit bigger. I made it a little bit too small, I think, so I'm just going to do that real quick. Getting into rigging the actual face, I like to keep everything flat when I start and just work on the depth of the features. So for now, I'm not worrying about adding any shape to the rotation. I'm just rotating them flatly where they generally should be. Next, I will grab the nose deformer and create a new parent for it that is nose XY 3D and add it to the 3D menu. The nose deformer should at the very least be as far out as the eyes, if not more, thinking about where the nose tip should be. I will also parent my nose XY deformer to the head rotation deformer. Give it a quick little spin, make sure that everything's moving good, and then we will move on to the mouth. When I did the mouth overall adjustment in the previous tutorial, I made this deformer freaking huge. It doesn't need to be this big. This is a little bit ridiculous, so I'm going to make it smaller. If you're a beginner, you might not have done this yet, but we're going to steal these keys and put them on a smaller deformer without redoing anything. So my new mouth adjustment deformer needs to only be as big as those other two deformers for the inner and outer mouths. So to start off, I'm going to create a new parent to both of those child deformers. And I'm just going to call it mouth adjustment. That's more descriptive than mouth parent, so that's what we're going with. I'm going to quickly make sure that it contains all of the child parameters, so it is big enough without being too big. Then, to steal the keys from the parent, all we have to do is go to the parent, select both at the same time, and then you can see in yellow which keys the parent has that this new deformer doesn't, and just add the keys that the parent has. Real quick, I'll throw the masks in the new adjustment deformer as well. Then you just drag this new deformer outside of that old parent, and it has all the same deformation. It's magical. So now that our deformer is reasonably sized, I will create a mouth XY 3D deformer. Now it is also freaking huge, so I'm gonna make it smaller again. Then I will summon my 3D menu with my hotkey because I cannot be bothered to go through the menus to find it. Make a hotkey, you're gonna be using it a lot, just get a hotkey. I will add the mouth to the 3D deformers list and give it some depth. Generally, I like to put the mouth about equal level with the eyes. If it's too far forward, your character will always look like their head's tilted up a bit. If it's too far back, your character will look like their head is tilted down a bit. So I usually find that around the eyes is pretty good. Next, we are moving on to the eyebrows. So I will grab my two brows, give them a new parent deformer, call it brows underscore XY underscore 3D. When you consider child keyforms, at least in the version that I'm working with, it does not consider blend shapes, and because my brows are keyed on blend shapes, I need to manually make the deformer bigger. Then I will add it to the 3D deformers list, parent it to the head rotation deformer, and I can work on my depth. It should be a little bit further out than the eyes, but you don't want to go too far or you'll be creating a Neanderthal and you'll run into clipping issues when the head angle is down, because the eyebrows will clip into the eye. And if you don't have masks for that, it will look bad. Most of our features are moving now, so I'm going to give it a little check, see if anything isn't quite where it should be. Next, I will move the blush and the head deformer into the Face XY 3D deformer that I made way earlier in the video to demonstrate the 3D menu. I will increase the amount of mesh it has because I want it to be at least as detailed as its children. Our original face deformer had a lot of definition because of the cheek puff. And I'm just going to give it some very basic keys like the rest of the face features. We're going to worry about its actual shape later. That's going to be the longest part in this video, so prepare yourself. Everything is rotating, so next I'm going to get all of the 3D deformers together and put them all in their own folder in our hierarchy so it's nice and organized. I will also delete all of the empty organizational deformers that no longer have any children. I'm going to add extended interpolation to all of my 3D deformers at this point, and in the interpolation adjustment, I'm only going to use 3 points instead of the default 5. 5 is too many, 3 is enough. So now we are moving quite smoothly. Now, relative to each other, all of the features are at the depths that I want, but the chin doesn't come out from the neck at all. So I'm going to exaggerate how far the face is rotating because I don't feel like it's rotating far enough. To do that, I'm just going to select all of my face deformers with the 3D settings and push them out farther and then update the keyform. So all of the angles end up staying the same and we can update them in 3D and everything will update properly. It'll just rotate further. Now I have 3D deformers for a lot of things, but we're not going to actually manipulate these anymore. What we're going to do is have additional XY deformers to control the individual shapes of the objects while leaving these 3D deformers flat. To that end, I need to make some XY deformers for some of the features. I'm going to add a deformer to the blush, and I'm going to call it blush_XY. The iris and eyelid deformers already have keys on them for other things, so I'm going to create a new parent on top of all of them and call it eyes_XY. I want the deformer to cover both sides. This is because the 3D menu has a symmetry option, so if I want the deformation to match left and right, I need to have a deformer that covers both. The nose already has an XY deformer, so we don't need to add one there. The brows do not have an XY deformer, so we are going to add one there. And same thing as the 3D brow deformer, we want to make sure that this brow deformer is big enough to cover the brow motion. I already have jaw open and mouth open keyed on the outer lips XY jaw open deformer, so I've renamed it to outer lips jaw open. And I'm going to add a new parent and call that one outer lips XY jaw open. I don't want to have 4 parameters keyed on one of the XY deformers. It just becomes a pain to manage all of the keys for it, and it'll be easier to work with this way. All of our deformers are set up and ready to go. Now, everything I show you past this point is a new recording because Live2D updated and changed the way that the 3D menu works in a very important way. It used to be that if you had keys on angle X and Y and like jaw open or any other parameter, you would have to change that other parameter's default value in order to use the 3D menu with it. But now it works by whatever you have active, so you don't need to go around changing all your defaults to make this thing work, which saves a significant amount of time. Now to get to the actual rigging, I'm going to start with the head because all of the other facial features rely on the head to look right. There is a number of ways to do this correctly. My way is by no means the only way, it's just how I like to do it using the 3D menu. First, I'm going to grab the head XY jaw open deformer, and I'm going to add _center to the end of the name. Then I will select the deformer along with the face layers, and then I will copy and paste twice to make 2 copies. I will rename the first copy, which now has a 2 behind the name, _left. So all of the 2's become _left instead. And the second copy, which has a 3 behind the name, will become _right. This gives me a left shape, a right shape, and a center shape. And then I can use glue to move the actual face between those different shapes. When you glue 2 meshes together, you can animate the glue compatibility, which is basically just if the glue is on or off. So if I have an invisible version of the face on the right or left, and then I glue the center face to that other shape, I can then blend between the center shape and the side shape with the same mesh by using glue compatibility. You'll see. Make sure you follow my next steps very carefully. The order I select meshes in is important. So I'll select the face and then face left and glue them together. Then I'll select the face and face right and glue them together. Then I'll grab the face line and glue that to the face line left, and then the face line to the face line right. In order to keep the project organized, I'm going to grab all of the left layers and I'm going to stick them in their own folder, and I'm going to grab all of the right layers and stick them in their own folder. Then I will grab all of the glues and make them all green, which means that they stick to the second name in the generated glue name. So they're sticking to the left and sticking to the right. I will make the default compatibility of all of these 0. Then I will add keys on angle X. And when the head is turned to the right, I will make only the right glues 100%, and when the face is to the left, I will make the left glues 100%. I will make the left and right versions of the face layers a 0% opacity. When I re-recorded this, I forgot to delete the keys, so right now I have keys on X and Y. Make sure it has no keys, these just stay transparent all the time. We will start with the center deformer for the face, so we'll add it to the 3D menu. Make sure that its settings match the 3D deformers that we've already made, so the rotation is happening from the same spot and everything. You should get into the habit of updating keyform every time you change a parameter, even if you haven't made any changes to the deformer yet. There's just one really weird behavior that Live2D does for the first 3D application whenever you change a parameter. So just do this first, especially if you're using symmetry mode. When I made all of my initial deformations using the 3D deformers, I assumed that everything was kind of at level for where the face would be. So this means that we need to pull the jaw back or down when the head is up, because the jaw is further back than the chin. We should be able to see that the head is nodding pretty convincingly. Of course, when we turn left and right, it's using the other deformers and not our main deformer, so it looks very flat once again. For the left and right deformers, ultimately we'll just be copying the form from whatever side we start with. I'm going to start with the left side, and then I'll move on to the right side later. When we add the left deformer to the 3D menu, we're also going to turn off symmetry. We don't want symmetry for this one. Then I just focus on smooshing the face into a nice, pleasant anime side shape. You know what I mean. Once I'm happy with that initial profile shape, I'm going to update the keyform and then check how it looks in the corners and how it blends with the center shapes. So my head's looking a little bit dented, and it's not blending super smoothly. So to fix the dent, I can actually edit the shape on the corner, and then when I hit update keyform, it will update the entire shape. It'll update the side view, it'll update the lower view, and it'll still work as a perfect 3D object. So when you're working with the 3D menu, you can always change the shape on any key, and all of your changes will be applied to the other keys. Sometimes this will mess up your other keys, so be prepared to undo and try again. It's a little bit of trial and error, but you'll get the hang of it once you use it a fair bit. Sometimes Live2D seems to undo some of your custom deformation work. This is because Live2D assumes that your default key is the front view of an object, and Live2D only estimates the depth to create 3D form when that object is rotated. This means that any shape you make, Live2D is going to force it to comply with 3D rules. It's actually genius, and I don't know how they do it. Whoever made it is a freaking genius and amazing. If you can't make the shape that you want, it means that your shape is probably impossible to make in 3D from the first place, and you shouldn't use the 3D menu to do it because it's not 3D. If you really can't make the shape that you want, you should probably just use the regular methods of rigging and not use the 3D menu. Or, like me, find a weird way to do it with glue instead. Rant aside, I'm somewhat happy with how my left face is looking, so I'm going to copy the form with Ctrl-Shift and C, and then I'm going to paste the form to my right deformer. Because the deformer is the same, it should paste the form with no problem. Obviously, it is on the wrong side, and to fix this, all we have to do is go into the three little lines on the parameter menu and reflect the parameter. And this should give us a perfectly mirrored version of the shape that we just made. So we just need to hit the update keyform, and it should work perfectly in the exact same way as the left side does. I'm going to check the motion now between the left and right, moving up and down and all around. And it is moving too far out on the cheek when it looks side to side. It's just moving like wrong. It's moving too far out. It shouldn't move that far out. So I'm gonna fix it. First, on that lower angle, I'm noticing that next to the chin, before it comes out to the cheek, which we already know is too far, it's also just too far in between the chin and the cheek. So I'm gonna pull that out a little bit first, because that might be what's throwing me off about the cheek. And while checking how that fix worked, I noticed that the center face is a little bit smaller vertically than the left and right faces, which is not good because, as we know from earlier, the rotation method that we're using should only move everything straight across on X. It should never move up and down when we move only X. So I need to make sure that the center matches the same height as the sides in order for it to be rotating properly. It probably would have been easier to start with the sides and then do the center, but I'm dumb, so I didn't. I'm also going to add extended interpolation to all three face deformers because I want it moving smoothly. It becomes very clear right here when I turn the character to the left that the cheek just like moves faster than the rest of the face. It doesn't look good, so I need to pull that cheek in for sure. At this point, it gets hard to tell whether or not the face is the wrong shape or if the features just look wrong on the face. So I'm going to move along and get the jaw open parameter working as well. Right now, the jaw open will literally just flatten the deformer out because we had keys on jaw open already. It's really easy to fix this. While the face is on the side, you just copy the form of the parameter that you've already made. So in this case, my side face. And then you paste that key, that form, onto the jaw open. Then while the jaw is open, if you hit the update keyform button, it will force the jaw back open while keeping your 3D shape. It's the closest thing to magic I've ever seen. Now, because it's just doing the same depth, the jaw isn't really rotating open from the side, so I'm gonna pull it backwards a bit so it more like rotates open like an actual jaw does. Of course, I'll make sure I get the center deformer jaw moving as well. I want to make sure that it has a nice chewing motion. Now I'm mostly paying attention to how it transitions from the middle to the left. The right is still the old version, so I'm kind of comparing the old and new and how it blends with the center. I want to see if I want to make any more changes before I copy the left face to the right face. So here I will be making some final tweaks. While the video plays in the background, I'm just going to rant a little bit about the 3D tool and why I like it. The tweaking might seem excessive just to make it work with the 3D menu, but I like making it work with the 3D menu because the 3D menu does all the work for me. I literally don't have to think too much. If something's moving weirdly, it's probably because my form isn't right. Not that I've accidentally moved the deformer in a silly way that is making it do weird warpy shit. Which, weird warpy shit is the bane of Live 2D's existence. It's what makes a lot of models look like shit. Weird warpy shit is what happens when things just kind of get smooshed to where somebody thinks that they should be, but they don't follow any kind of logic necessarily, or some parts are moving more than other parts. Anything that gives the wrong impression of a shape as it moves, it's very difficult to avoid. So I like using the 3D menu because it automatically gives you a very solid basis without you having to worry about the weird warpy shit. Once I am finally done with all my tweaking and I'm happy with it, I will copy the form to the right deformer. Then I will simply reflect the motion and apply the 3D form. Now both rotations should be symmetrical. Of course, I didn't copy the jaw over, so the jaw is still broken on the right side, so I'm going to go copy the left open jaw, which I also need to fix because I did a bunch of tweaking and I didn't apply that to the jaw open. So I'm just going to fix the jaw open on the left real quick and then copy it over to the right. And then I'm going to change my mind a bunch and tweak the jaw open because I have a problem. And now that I am officially happy with the jaw open and the head angles on the left, now I will copy them over to the right and make sure that they are all applied to the 3D angles. Now, because I am happy and I just tweaked the ever-living shit out of the sides, I will just change the center deformer to make sure that everything stays pretty well even when rotating left and right, and I will be done the head when that is finally working properly. Realistically, this character is bald, so I care about what the head shape looks like on the top. Most of the time you're gonna have hair that covers this, so you probably don't need to be as specific as I am being here. I'm going to add some keys to the lines at this point and just make it disappear when the character looks up to the right and up to the left because I think that's cute. Despite my rant earlier, editing things when you're like done to look a little bit better in shape is fine. So at this point, I'm going to go and manually fix some of the keys that I think look a little silly on the head. The shape is simply still wrong on some angles. Once I'm happy with the new shape, I will copy all of the keys for the new head shape from jaw closed to jaw open to make sure that jaw open gets the right shape as well. This part is stupid and took a long time. It took 4 minutes in real life. I just don't have commentary, so I'm just gonna speed it up and vanish until it's done. Hey, we're done the head angles and the jaw now. Celebration. The first thing I'm going to do next is the blush. I already have the deformer prepared, the Blush XY deformer, so I will just grab it. I will add it to the 3D menu. I will make sure symmetry is on, and then I will smoosh it to where the cheeks should be. I want to bring the center of the deformer out to where I think the kind of center of the face, so like where the nose bridge, like between the eyes, between the eyebrows. And then on the edges, I want the far edge to kind of wrap around or smoosh so it looks like it wraps around the cheek as the head turns. The face, of course, still looks a little silly, but the blush looks how I want it to, so I'm going to move on to the eyes. So I add my keys, I add it to the 3D menu, and then I can start deforming. I like to start the eyes with the head looking up because it's really easy to imagine the sphere of the eye and make them nice and evenly round. It's a little more difficult to do this from the side, so I like to start either up, down works too, but I start with up. Really quick, I'm gonna demonstrate what happens if you update the keyform after making some changes. So if I just tilt the head up, make my changes, and then hit update keyform, wow, it undoes everything I just did. That's horrible. Why? When it tries to make the deformer symmetrical, it tries to just use what you've changed. But if you have just moved to a new keyform, I guess it just thinks that the entire deformer has changed, so it tries to apply the symmetry over the entire thing. If you hit update keyform first and then make your changes, it actually only listens to the changes that you made and not the entire deformer. It's a little weird, but it is what it is. So bearing that in mind, I'm going to hit update keyform first, and then I will make my actual changes to the eye. For anime eyes, I like to start by rounding them off nicely, and then I'll pull the outer corner back or down further than the inner corner. Now, eyes aren't completely flat when you look to the side. Because eyes are round, generally your upper lid comes out further than your lower lid, which also means that when your head is tilted up, the eyes get a little taller. This should already look pretty solid when we turn the head to the side. The only thing I'm really noticing is that the edge of the eyelash is getting stretched a fair bit, so I'm going to move that forward so it's not as stretched. I think my tear duct is also a little too far in the face for the anime look that I'm going for, so I'm going to pull that back out a bit. It looks pretty solid, so I'm going to go and I'm going to check all of the rotations and how it's blending and make sure that I like how it looks all the time. And I do, so I'm going to move on to the brows. You know the drill, we add some keys, we add it to the 3D menu, we update the keyform, and then we make our changes. For the brows, I want to make sure that when the brows are down on the lowest angle, they don't go over the eyes at all. Because I have no masks, so if the eyebrows ever go over the eyes, we'll just see the eyes under the eyebrows, which is not good. We want to avoid that. Future gun here. I'm going to blur things from the future that you shouldn't see yet because this recording was from the very end of the video once I realized I had fucked up. You'll also want to open the eyes as wide as they go. I forgot to do this, so my eyebrows ended up overlapping my eyes when they were at their widest and the brows were down and the head was looking down. So also make sure to enable the other eye and brow parameters while you're working on the brow angles to make sure that they never overlap things that they shouldn't. The brows are coming out too far. I want them moving half as far, so I am blend pasting 50% of the default position. Then when I update the keyform, they will move half as much as they did before. They're still looking a little bit flat, so I'm just gonna pull the outer edge down a bit. When everything's working correctly, you get an optical illusion that just tells your brain that it is 3D, even though it's not. That's what I'm looking for, and that's why I rotate the head in little circles. The brows are fooling my brain, so I am moving on to the nose. The 3D menu is giant and in my way, so I'm gonna move it over. When I created this nose deformer, I made sure that it had a deformation point on the actual point of the nose, so I am matching the deformer handles to the deformer itself, so I can control the point of the nose, and control the bridge of the nose, and control how angled the sides of the nose are. The center points all control where the bridge of the nose is, so I want the center of the top of the bridge of the nose to be in between the eyebrows. And then for the nose bridge between the eyes, I just want it to be a little bit more forward than the between the eyes area. And for the tip, obviously I want the tip to be pointy. And then for the nose sides, I'll pull them all back so that the nose is like kind of a triangle shape from the top and bottom. Even if you have a super simple nose, I really recommend putting the effort into making the deformation more 3D. You can really feel it, I think, and it's really worth the effort. The other thing to consider for the nose is, in the mouth tutorial, I put keys on mouth X. But we already have a mouth X blend shape, and honestly, I don't think we need keyforms for mouth X for the nose. It really just makes more work that I don't want to do. So I'm going to copy the keyforms that I had on mouth X and paste them to the blend shape mouth X instead. Before I delete the original keyforms, I'll double check that it works well with the angles that we made. It does, so I'll delete the keys then. And save myself some work. I like to work on the inner mouth first and then match the lips to the teeth. I find it's a little easier and more stable to work with. So I will grab all of my inner mouth XY deformers and add the keys and add them to the 3D menu. I can't see shit right now, so I'm going to turn the outer mouth folder off, and I'm also going to hide the mouth back because I want to see the chin and I can't really see the chin with the mouth back in the way. The upper teeth are on top of all of the other layers, so they are the most visible, and I will start with them. Basically, I'm just imagining the skull within the head, and I'm trying to put the teeth where I think the skull would be. I'm mostly keeping an eye on the center of the deformer for the upper teeth, and I want to make sure that it is kind of continuing down from where I think the bottom of the nose connects to the face. When I'm happy with the upper teeth, I will move on to the lower teeth. And I just want to make sure that they never disconnect from the upper teeth. Even though the lower teeth are technically behind the upper teeth, I'm going to animate them like they're kind of on the same plane. So I don't want the lower teeth to look like they are too far behind the upper teeth, or we will get gaps. The lower teeth are looking pretty good, so I am going to do the tongue next. The Distort Temporary Warp Deformer lets you pull the back of the tongue back while leaving the front of the tongue where it should be, which results in a very 3D shape when we apply the 3D form. When the head rotates up right now, it looks wrong because the tongue like flips over itself. We will fix that later. For now, I just want to make sure that the curve of the tongue matches the curve of the lower teeth. I also use the Distort Temporary Warp Deformer to get the lower back teeth into shape. Because we are using glue to make the 3D form of the lower teeth, we can treat these warp deformers like they are planes, and we will still get a super 3D result. The glue for the lower back teeth was all explained in part 3, the mouth tutorial. So if you're wondering why it's moving the way that it is, the specifics of the glue are covered there. The important thing to know for the head angles is that the left glue turns off when the head turns to the left, leaving only the upper version of the teeth. This upper version of the teeth wraps around the tongue and just looks like the top of the back teeth around the tongue. All of the blend shapes that we previously put on the inner mouth should work perfectly fine. I'll give my angles a quick check, and it looks like I forgot to apply the 3D form for one of the lower teeth. So I just go back to that side view of the face where I have it looking the way that I want and update the keyform. Everything's a little broken on that upper angle. I'm gonna ignore it for now and fix it later. So I'm going to select all of my lower jaw deformers and copy the angle form with Ctrl Shift and C, and then I will open the jaw and hit Ctrl Shift V to paste the form. And then when I update the keyform, it'll open the jaw again, like it did with the head angle earlier, and I have a solid basis to work from. Since I've already done the head itself, I'm just imagining where the jaw should be within the chin. So jaws rotate open, so it should be further back than it is now, and it should stay inside the head nice and neatly. For the most part, this is pretty much perfect. There is a bit of a gap between the lower teeth and the tongue, but that's about the only problem that we actually have. So I just need to smoosh the teeth over a little bit to fit under the tongue, and we should be golden. Even if the right side of the teeth looks a little funny when the head looks to the left, it doesn't really matter because you won't really ever see the edges here. The lips and cheeks will typically block this. I just like making it perfect. The tongue is looking mighty flat, so I'm going to make it a little bit more round. This does technically break some of the other angles, so I'm going to manually fix those angles and not use the 3D tool anymore for the jaw open tongue. Giving it a quick check, I'm being fooled into thinking it is 3D, so I am ready to call the open jaw done. So I'm going to go back to the closed mouth and fix some of the problems there. There is a gap between the tongue and the lower back teeth on the jaw closed, so I'm going to fix those gaps. These are going to be manual fixes. The overall motion of the jaw is really good, so these minor changes won't mess it up. So I'm not going to use the 3D tool anymore, I'm just going to manually smoosh the problems away. The upper angle of the closed jaw is still super fucked up, so we need to go fix that. I'm going to grab my tongue deformer, and then holding Alt, I'll scale the bottom up, which flips the deformer over. Right now, it's already flipping over itself on the way up, so this just undoes that initial flip that we don't want. Then I am going to calculate the corners and only select the upper two corners. This will mix my new upper frame with my side frames, and it'll just work perfectly. I left my tongue a little bit too low. I need to remember that I want my tongue to be where the upper edge of the lower teeth is, so I just need to move it up. Once I'm happy with the tongue, I will repeat that process on the lower teeth. Make sure you remember to check the transition between closed jaw and open jaw every once in a while, and make sure that your teeth are moving properly. With my corners calculated, it's time to make any final adjustments and fine-tune the shapes. The lower teeth are looking a little short, and I don't want any gaps to appear when the lips are moving, so I'm going to make them a little bit wider. Now I'm just really paying attention to all of the transitions and making sure that nothing sticks out in a weird way, and the lower teeth are sticking out in a weird way sometimes, so I'm gonna hunt that down and fix it. Because this was split between two recordings, I messed something up in between. So because I made this in two recordings, at some point in the old file I had keyed the glue on jaw open, so it was turning back on when it should have stayed off. That was my bad, but that's what the problem was. It was why I couldn't fix the teeth, so I am turning it off again while the jaw is open, making sure that it is 0 for the left teeth when the head is left, 0 for the right teeth when the head is right, and then I can fix the teeth. So now only the upper lower teeth deformer should move the outer teeth. And that means that I can just tuck them in nicely behind the lower middle teeth so they don't peek out in a bad way. With the inner mouth done, it is time to move on to the final face feature, the outer mouth. It can be really difficult to place the outer mouth over the teeth if you can't see the teeth, so I usually activate press lip open so that I can see the teeth. You don't want the inner teeth sliding around in the mouth as you rotate. I'm going to add keys on jaw open and the head angles because the outer lips XY jaw open deformer is meant to make different shapes if the jaw is open than if it is closed. For the actual keying, I don't want to put the lips too far in front of the teeth, but I want them to kind of act like they're on the same plane. So I am trying to match the middle of the deformer, so that center line of vertices on the deformer to the center of the teeth. Then I'm going to pull the lip corners back. Right now I am only paying attention to where the lips and teeth are in relation to each other. The whole mouth is too far forward on the face, but I will fix that later. So I'm just going to fine-tune the position of the lips while using the 3D menu. Once I'm happy with the closed jaw lips, I will move on to the open jaw. I'll copy the form so I have a solid base to work from, and then I'll pull the lower lip back to match the jaw. I'll also pull the upper lip out a little bit because the jaw and mouth opening kind of changes some of the positions of things. I want to make sure that the upper lip stays in the middle of the teeth. Then I will also make sure that the open jaw and open mouth look good at all angles. Tweak, tweak, tweak. I'm just tweaking stuff and letting the video play. Tweaking, tweaking, tweak, tweak. Really quick, I'm just going to add extended interpolation to all of my XY deformers. I'll make sure to deselect any meshes that have gotten caught up in the selection. I don't want to apply extended interpolation to the meshes themselves at all. So checking the overall face motion now, the mouth is just too far out. It's too close to the nose. It's too far out of the face for my liking. Fixing this is extremely easy. We just need to grab our mouth XY 3D deformer and move the mouth further into the face. Unfortunately, this does mean that my jaw is too far in the head. I don't like where it is, so I'm going to move it back out. So I'm going to grab all of my lower jaw deformers, and when the jaw is open, I will just move them out. When I update the keyform, it does mean that I'm going to have to redo some of my fixes from earlier, but I know exactly what I need to fix, so it's very quick and easy. Once the fixes are done, I will return to the outer mouth and fix the lips on jaw open as well. I realize here that the lips aren't quite deforming the same as the deformer that I have selected. So I try increasing the density and it doesn't fix the lips. So I just need to go down the deformer chain and find whatever deformer doesn't have high density. My Mouth X and Shrug deformer only has 5x5, so I need to increase the density of that for my lips to actually move properly. And now it looks a bit silly on X when it moves because it's actually getting the density of the parent, so I need to go back to my outer lips XY and smooth it out so it doesn't peak in the middle. Mouth X is now a lot smoother, and I don't really care too much that the teeth are being revealed because I'm only checking the Mouth X keyform right now, not the Mouth X blend shape. The teeth move with the Mouth X blend shape, so it should be fine when that's active as well. We will check the face with tracking soon, so if there are any problems, we'll fix them then. For now, I'm gonna go back to tweaking the mouth open and jaw open head angles. And basically all I'm doing is activating different mouth shapes and seeing how it looks. And if it doesn't look good, I adjust it, and if it looks good, I don't adjust it. Pretty straightforward. Once there are no more edits to make to the face, I'm going to go to the head rotation deformer and add keys for the head Z angle. Now it is time to open the physics window and see how this all looks with some tracking. Connecting Live 2D and VTube Studio was covered in part 3, so if you are lost, please go to that video and check it out there. I'm going to push the tracking to the absolute limits, so I'm going to be moving my mouth left and right, opening and closing it, making a number of expressions while moving the head all around. If I see anything wrong, I'm going to need to fix it, and if I don't see anything, I'm done. Realistically, I think the head still moves a little weird, even after all the work I put in earlier, but this is usually covered by hair, so I don't care too much about what the back of the head, the top of the head are doing. The actual face, the expressions, the mouth, everything else is working exactly the way that I want it to, so I am done. Thank you for watching part 4 of the VBridger 2024 rigging tutorial. If you have any questions about VBridger rigging, please consider joining the VBridger Discord. The Discord link is in the VBridger menu, so just open up your app, go to the settings, and it's at the bottom of the list. I have been your host, The Art Gun, and I will see you next time in part 5 for the tongue. Hopefully that one also comes out in 2024, otherwise I'm going to have trouble naming things properly.